Today, we welcome to the show an attorney from the Pennsylvania area by the name of Michael Boni, who represented victim number one in the Jerry Sandusky child pedophilia trial. Michael, welcome to the show. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me on.
We appreciate it. Am I hearing something in the background? Is that something, Joe? We can.
It's very loud, yeah.
Yeah, hold on.
Hard to hear you.
We're going to get that knocked out here real quick. There we go. Now is that better?
Much better.
Perfect. Last Friday, of course, the NCAA and Penn State reached a settlement which allowed, among other things, the consent decree to go away. Previously, the bowl eligibility was restored, as were scholarships. In addition, last Friday, the victories of Joe Paterno were reinstated. And I read a quote, at least, from you, and I never trust what I read sometimes, so I always check with the person who supposedly made the quote, that you were not so happy with that part of it.
Yeah, I think what I tried to get across was that I had mixed feelings. My sensitivities are to the alums, the players, the student body, the faculty. There are an awful lot of people who were harmed by the NCAA who had nothing whatsoever to do with with Sandusky's horrific acts with untold numbers of kids. But where I was disappointed, and I'm still disappointed, and I pulled no punches, I'm disappointed that they restored the victories because it's one giant step toward restoring Joe Paterno's legacy. The next thing that's being discussed is putting his statue back up. He's now, I wonder how Bobby Bowden feels about it, but he's now the winningest NCAA football coach, like he was before the sanction. And I don't think he deserves it. I really don't. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah, I was going to ask you why.
Yeah. From looking at the evidence that was amassed, which included emails directly between and among the senior management at Penn State, Graham Spanier, the former president, Joseph Curley, the athletic director, blanking on the third guy.
Gary Schultz, Tim Curley, Schultz. Graham Spanier.
Yeah, Schultz. Who was the finance director and who was in charge of security at Penn State. They exchanged a series of emails in which, after Mike McQueary reported what he saw in the shower with Sandusky and that little boy, they were discussing in the emails going to the authorities. But they said, I think the better thing to do is what Joe suggests. Now, I'm paraphrasing. I'm not quoting. They're not, these emails aren't in front of me. But the emails suggested that Joe was essentially a part of the cover-up. And that's what the Freeh report found. And listen, Joe Paterno did some great things. He was a philanthropist. He was a terrific football coach. But the problem was it was football over the welfare of children. Joe Paterno himself admitted, and this is almost a quote, he said, I should have done more.
Well, Yeah, what he said, though, in fairness, was with the benefit of hindsight, I wish I had done more.
Right.
So that's a little bit different than just saying, I wish I had done more. Now, the Freeh report has been widely discredited, Michael. You know that. We're
discredited by the Paterno family.
By just about anyone who's had a chance to. You've read through the entire Freeh report, I take it?
I did.
And I have as well. I saw no evidence in there that would even indicate a smidgen of Joe Paterno involved in any kind of cover-up, or that a cover-up even took place.
You didn't read the appendix then, because
I read the entire thing, cover to cover, word for word. And by the way, I'll tell you who agrees with me. You know who Frank Fina is. He was one of the lead prosecutors in the Sandusky trial. And he agrees with that there's nothing in the Freeh report or anywhere that says Joe Paterno.
He said,
Joe Paterno. Yeah, he found no evidence. Well, don't you think he looked everywhere?
I don't know. I don't know what he did. I know he didn't try the case. Joe McGettigan tried the case, and Joe McGettigan was brought in, especially from the Philadelphia DA's office, to try the case. I don't know why Frank Fina didn't, but he didn't try the case. That was McGettigan. I can tell you that it's a public document. Anyone is free to go online and read the Freeh report, and particularly go to the appendix where the emails reside, where the emails are there, and where it says clearly. In fact, Spanier's email said, we may get in trouble for this, but we'll worry about that down the road, in the same email thread that they said we'll follow Joe's recommendations not to go to the authorities.
First of all, the authority was Schultz. He oversaw the university police, so he's aware of the entire thing. Yeah. Now, the entire thing becomes muddled because
guilty, so that's good. So
well, wait a minute though. The entire thing becomes very muddled with McQueary's testimony, because no one knows what McQueary said to Joe Paterno. The end game was that he said there was horseplay. Now, I think horseplay is quite a stretch from that to someone having sex with a young boy in a shower. And by the way, that particular...
Were you at the trial?
Wait a minute. That particular...
I was at the trial. Did you hear McQueary's testimony?
I read it, yes.
Did you read his testimony?
Yes.
Okay.
McQueary changed his story, at least 4 times.
He was unequivocal in his statement.
And which version is that he gave?
His court testimony.
Right.
But he testified to in court.
And he testified previously and made several different kinds of versions of that very same statement.
No.
They were all different.
You'd like to believe that.
No, I don't like to believe it. I read them.
Well, where'd you read different stories?
In very, very different publications, including his grand jury testimony.
All right. Well, you've got your view. You're right. There are a lot of people who don't like the results of the Freeh report. Penn State paid for it, paid $8 million or whatever for it, and Louis Freeh has a sterling reputation. And
no, he does not. That's a misstatement. Louis Freeh's reputation is horrific. Each report that he's done since he was forced to resign as the FBI director has been called into question for the credibility and accuracy. I mean, come on, you know that.
Well, people who fall on the short side of an investigation are not going to take it lying down. That's the bottom line.
It isn't the people that are falling on the short side of the investigation.
Sure it is.
No, it isn't. It's independent bodies that have, in fact, thrown his investigation out with regard to FIFA in his soccer investigation. You're aware of that, I'm sure.
Well,
it was totally discredited.
All right. So
now the evidence also is obvious to anyone reading it that Freeh worked in conjunction. His people that did this investigation worked in conjunction with the NCAA, which wasn't supposed to be the case at all.
That's how thorough the investigation was.
Thorough?
That's how wide-reaching it was.
What does the NCAA have to offer in terms of information with regard to Jerry Sandusky and what he did or didn't do?
What does Louis Freeh and his colleagues have to gain by doing a hatchet job or by doing anything other than a thoroughly independent investigation?
Thoroughly independent? He was paid $9 million from Penn State.
Exactly.
What's independent about that?
So wouldn't you think that his interest lies with Penn State?
With justifying, yes, I do think his interest lies with the person that paid him, Rodney Eric. Hold on. Yes, you asked me a question. I'm answering your question.
You're not going to let me speak.
You asked me a question, Michael. I'm answering the question. You asked me if I thought it was independent. I said independent. They paid $9 million because they had to justify the firing of Joe Paterno. And Louis Freeh gave him exactly what $9 million million buys. He was also paid handsomely in the soccer investigation, which was completely discredited.
Wow.
He also accused Richard Jewell in the Atlanta bombing of the Olympics, and he was dead wrong. This guy has a litany of being in error and wrong on almost everything he's so-called investigated. How you could hang your hat on this guy is shocking.
It's your show. It's your show. You don't need to filibuster.
I'm answering your question. I'm reciting the litany of events where this guy's been discredited.
Jewel or about FIFA. I asked you about Penn State.
I answered you.
Alumnus of Penn State?
I have nothing to do with Penn State. No connection whatsoever.
You're very passionate about this.
Because I like the truth.
Yeah, well, if you like the truth, then read the Freeh report.
I read the Freeh report. I read the Freeh report. I understand the Freeh report.
You didn't read those emails.
Yes, I did. I read every single thing in there. I'm starting to doubt that you did.
You say Joe didn't know.
Why do you suppose Frank Fina feels so strongly that there was no evidence against Joe Paterno?
No one said he felt strongly. He said, I didn't have evidence.
Why would he say it on 60 Minutes?
I have no reason why at the time he was on 60 Minutes he said that. But he's wrong. There is
He's wrong. Well,
There's evidence.
No, there isn't.
Okay.
What evidence do you have that there was a cover-up? What email can you cite where anyone refers to Joe Paterno saying we can't let anyone know about? Wait a minute, listen to me. We can't let anyone know about this because it will ruin our football program. Where is that email?
That is a loaded. That's your classic loaded question. I told you what it says. Schultz, Curley, and Spanier agreed to follow Joe's advice. It says Joe. It didn't say Joe Paterno. Can you think of any other Joe who it might be?
Tell me exactly what the email said. Go ahead and read the email again, word for word.
I don't have the email.
Well, that's part of the problem because it's the way in which Joe Paterno didn't even have email. He was not a part of any of these emails.
I told you
Several of the emails referred to Coach. Now, I suppose you interpret that as being Joe Paterno.
No, but I interpret Joe as Joe Paterno.
And it never said that Joe Paterno said we need to hide this.
No, not in those words. Of course not.
Well, what words did they use?
They said in substance that Joe suggested that we don't go to the authorities, that instead we go to the second mile, and that we talk to him, meaning Jerry Sandusky, and tell him never to do it again, something like that.
Michael, that's a mischaracterization of the email, and you know it. Nowhere did it say that Joe Paterno suggested not to go to the authorities.
The authorities.
No, it did not.
Well, okay, it's out there. Your listeners can go online and they can read the emails themselves.
Is the head of the university police in your mind the authorities?
No,
it's not.
No.
Well, what other police should be involved?
What other police? The police.
What police?
The law enforcement.
The university police are certified police. Their jurisdiction is the Penn State campus.
So you read those emails and you construed not going to the authorities when the head of security is one of the people on the email thread, and you think that by not going to the authorities they meant campus police. I mean, that's absurd.
First of all, the other police, whomever it is that you're referring to, whatever other police you're referring to, already thoroughly investigated Jerry Sandusky.
You were going to do an ambush.
I'm not ambushing you at all. You were a lawyer representing one of the victims. You made statements. I'm questioning you about your statements.
You're not questioning. You're indicting.
Indicting what?
Between questioning.
I'm questioning you about where you come to the conclusion that Joe Paterno took part in a cover-up. You don't want to answer that?
You are giving your views. You're not asking questions to get information.
I'm certainly asking questions to get information. I asked you where it is that there's any evidence that Joe Paterno committed a cover-up or took part in a cover-up.
I answered that question. And he remains silent, and he knows
he's dead.
Done more. Yeah, well...
That's why he remained silent.
Right. And obviously to say he wasn't charged with anything is ludicrous because he died within days or weeks of this coming to light. So it's absurd to say that.
Within days or weeks of this coming to light, what are you talking about?
When Sandusky was arrested, when Jerry Sandusky was arrested, how long did...
It was 2 months before Joe Paterno died. What do you mean days?
Okay, it was 2 months.
There was plenty of time. He went through grand jury testimony. Plenty of time to have indicted or charged him.
But they didn't indict or charge Schultz, Curley, and Spanier until after that time. So
what does that have to do with Joe Paterno?
Well, it's silly to...
The reason they didn't indict him or charge him, Michael, and you know, is because, as Frank Fina said, there was no evidence to suggest Joe... Do you think Fina's a bad prosecutor, a bad investigator?
Well, he's not with the state attorney general anymore. I have no idea how good or bad he is.
Well, you must think he's bad because you're saying there was evidence to get Joe Paterno charged with a cover-up, but yet this prosecutor somehow failed to do so.
Oh, we're going round and round, my man. So where do you want to go?
No, we're really not. Well, let's go to the victim number one. He was the one that you represented, right?
Yeah, I'm not talking about anything about victim number one. That's not what you asked to talk about.
Well, I asked you to talk about the Penn State settlement.
You asked me to talk about the settlement, right?
Yeah. So the Penn State settlement, by its very nature, includes the victims of the Sandusky trial. That's what the settlement's about.
I'm not giving you any information about the privacy of my...
No, I'm not asking you for that. I'm asking, how about this question? And this has nothing to do with any attorney-client privilege. Why did your client, on his book tour, when he was asked if he blamed Penn State, why did he say no?
I'm not answering that. I'm not talking about my client or his book tour or anything like that.
Even the fact that he had a Penn State banner hanging from his house when he was doing a 2020 interview. He didn't seem to blame Penn State for anything.
I'm not talking about him. So you want to do an unannounced hatchet job? Go ahead.
Unannounced hatchet job?
Yeah, that's what you're doing.
I told you I wanted to talk to you about the Penn State settlement and your belief that Joe Paterno was involved in a cover-up.
Correct.
So where's the hatchet job?
Well, this whole call. I've been interviewed. I can't count how many times, and I've been on TV, I can't count how many times, and journalists aren't
journalists?
op-eds. Yeah.
You call the people that have covered this story journalists? Because they wouldn't press you on giving evidence of what I consider a slanderous statement by you. That means they're journalists because they don't read the Freeh report and they don't know any better. I've interviewed some of your so-called journalists, and guess what, Michael? That none of them, to a person, have read the Freeh report. None of them.
How do you know that?
Because I asked them, and they admitted it. By the way, neither did Ed Ray, who was the second in command at the NCAA. He's never read the Freeh report.
All right.
There are plenty of people who haven't read it.
You asked for the emails. On February 27, 2001, Curley sent Spanier and Schultz an email that reads as follows, and I'm reading it verbatim. I had scheduled a meeting with you this afternoon about the subject we discussed on Sunday. After giving it more thought and talking it over with Joe yesterday, I am uncomfortable with what we agreed were the next steps. I am having trouble with going to everyone but the person involved. I think I would be more comfortable meeting with the person, that's Sandusky, and tell him about the information we received. That's from Mike McQueary. I would plan to tell him we are aware of the first situation, that's the 1998 situation. I would indicate we feel there is a problem, and we want to assist the individual to get professional help. Also, we feel a responsibility at some point soon to inform his organization, which is Second Mile, and maybe the other one, Department of Public Welfare, about the situation. If he is cooperative, we would work with him to handle informing the organization, Second Mile. If not, we do not have a choice and will inform the two groups. That's Department of Public Welfare and Second Mile. Additionally, I will let him know that his guests are not permitted to use our facilities. I need some help on this one. What do you think about this approach? The same day, Graham Spanier, the former president of Penn State, said, Tim, that's Tim Curley, this approach is acceptable to me. It requires you to go a step further and means your conversation, that's with Sandusky, will be all the more difficult, but I admire your willingness to do that, and I am supportive. The only downside for us is if the message isn't quote-unquote heard and acted upon by Sandusky, and we then become vulnerable for not having reported it. But that can be assessed down the road. The approach you outline is humane and a reasonable way to proceed. And in an email dated February 28th, 2001, Schultz responded as follows. Tim and Graham, this is a more humane and upfront way to handle this. I can support this approach with the understanding that we will inform his organization, with or without his cooperation. I think that's what Tim proposed. We can play it by ear and decide about the other organization, meaning the Department of Public Welfare. Those emails.
So, wait a minute. Hold it. Let me stop you. Yeah. Where in those emails that you just read, is there anything remotely that says Joe Paterno recommended we don't go to the authorities?
After giving it more thought and talking it over with Joe yesterday, I am uncomfortable with what we agreed were the next steps.
He's uncomfortable. That doesn't indicate anything that Paterno said or suggested, or if he made any suggestions whatsoever.
Well, but we know in other emails what he was uncomfortable.
No, we don't.
They agreed were the next steps, which was going to the Department of.
No, we don't. We don't know anything from Joe Paterno. You know an email thread from those three individuals, but that does not include Joe Paterno.
I never said it included Joe.
Yes, you did. You said these emails are what convinces you that Joe Paterno took part in a cover-up, and your words, recommended not going to the authorities.
You never heard me say he was part of these emails.
You said that Joe Paterno recommended not going to the authorities, and it was clear in the emails.
After giving it more thought and talking it over with Joe, I am uncomfortable with what we agreed were the next steps. What they agreed were the next steps was to include going to the Department of Public Welfare. That would have blown the lid off of this thing. Had they done that?
Well, let me ask you this. If that would have blown the lid off of this, why did it not? Let me ask you this, Michael. Why didn't it blow the lid off of it in 1998?
More thought and talking it over with.
You've already read that. Why didn't it blow the lid off of it in 1998?
What's that?
If that would have blown the lid off of it, had Graham Spanier gone to the Department of Public Welfare, and you said it would have blown the lid off of it, why didn't it blow the lid off of it in 1998 when the Department of Public Welfare investigated Sandusky?
Different set of facts. Who knows?
A lot stronger set of facts. You had a woman listening in with the police while her child was talking to them. That was a lot stronger set of facts.
And where he said he wished he were dead. But
that seems to be a lot stronger set of facts to me.
By saying I wish I were dead?
They exonerated Sandusky.
I agree. I agree that whatever happened in the investigation, there is some story there, and you know it. Ricard died mysteriously. They found his laptop in the bottom of a river, and something happened with that investigation. If we can't agree on that...
Well, I think we agree on that, but it certainly wasn't Penn State.
No, I'm not saying...
I agree with you. Something untoward was going on there.
I mean...
But I will tell you this, too, that if you know that McQueary didn't tell Joe Paterno that there was a sexual assault unless you believe only one or 1A or 1C or 1D of McQueary's stories, that he colored his conversation in horseplay. So really at the time that we're talking about, if Paterno takes it upward, up the chain as he did and was required to do, it was horseplay. So you're talking about Graham Spanier, Tim Curley, and Gary Schultz hearing that there was horseplay between Sandusky and a kid in their shower. So to me, the logical point of the move at that point would be to go to Sandusky and say, what the F was going on?
Right. In the meantime, there were kids paraded in and out of that shower for many, many, many years. So they could answer their own question. But that's completely. I mean, you're leaving common sense at the door. And
I don't think
really,
I am at all. And
really doing some mental gymnastics.
I think, and I would say the same of you.
That's the logical human behavior when a guy, an assistant coach, a young assistant coach, goes to Joe Pa and says what he saw. But he didn't say what he saw. If you want to call it horseplay, and he testified.
I'm not calling it horseplay. McQueary called it horseplay.
Yeah, okay. He didn't call it horseplay.
Yes, he did.
Okay, so we disagree. So I mean, you know, you're
well, he said he called it different things at different times. I'll grant you that.
He testified as to what he saw and what he heard and where he stood. And it was unequivocal. It was unequivocal. And for Joe, who admitted that he wished he had done more.
He said, with the benefit of hindsight, I wish I had done more. With the benefit of hindsight.
That's fine.
That's huge.
He would have done more.
That's a huge qualifier, but he didn't have that information. That's the point.
Well, he talked him out of going to the Department of Public Welfare, that's for sure.
Well, no, it's not for sure. That's your conclusion.
After giving it more thought and talking it over with Joe, I am uncomfortable with what we agree were the next steps.
Well, what did they agree were the next steps?
What they agree were the next... Now, we're
you don't know. No, you don't know. Neither do I. I don't know. I don't know what they had previously agreed upon. For all we know, Joe Paterno told them, go to the governor. We don't know what Joe Paterno told them. We have no idea.
Okay.
And Frank Fina, who is the prosecutor in this case, agrees.
It's pure. I mean, you're just spinning.
I'm not spinning anything. You're trying to ruin a guy's reputation over innuendo.
No, I am not trying to do anything.
Of course you are.
I've been an attorney for more than 25 years, and as
have I.
Very good, and I know it when I see it, and
as do I.
And this is a...
and I tend to pay attention to the prosecutor who... You didn't investigate this case, neither did I. The prosecutor did. And the prosecutor has every reason to come after anyone that he even suspects is involved in child pedophilia, and certainly someone who would have covered it up to protect a football culture, which was a joke to begin with. Anyone who did such a heinous act would, my guess, be in the crosshairs of every decent, responsible prosecutor in the history of prosecution.
What was the joke to begin with?
Pardon?
What you said, which is a joke to begin with? This
allegation of football culture overriding academia at Penn State. That's a laughingstock. That's a joke.
I see.
Well, you see, how about 88% graduation rates?
You don't think...
How about the NCAA using Penn State's football program as the model program for other football programs to come into State College and observe so that they could take it back to their campus?
Well, listen, I'm just... I believe the Freeh report. I think it was well done. I think it's credible. I think that
You're in the distinct minority there.
Well, I'm not. You haven't polled the country. Yeah, I mean, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, no, I do. You don't.
So what do you make of Spanier saying the only downside for us is if the message isn't heard and acted upon, and we meaning Penn State, then become vulnerable for not having reported it?
I don't know what the message he's trying to communicate is. For all you know, and for all I know, Graham Spanier's message to Sandusky was going to be, turn yourself in or we will. You don't know that. I don't know that.
Well,
do you know that?
It suggests strongly. It suggests strongly that they were not going to turn him in. They said, well, to tell him we are aware of the situation, the first situation, and we would indicate we feel there's a problem. We want to assist the individual to get professional help. Not that they would turn him in. We want to assist the individual, which is obviously Sandusky, to get professional help. I mean, you got to parse these emails. They're
well, yes, you do, but you can't just
ambiguous.
You can't just throw. I agree with you. You can't just throw your interpretation in as fact.
I don't think they're ambiguous.
I think they are.
Okay, all right.
As in terms of what, especially in terms of Joe Paterno's role,
it's been longer than 20 minutes. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I would. I don't blame you for believing the Freeh report. It made you a lot of money, and people that made a lot of money off this,
very nice.
People that made a lot of money off this should believe the Freeh report.
I see. That's what you're accusing me of.
Well, did you make a lot of money off of it?
Very nice. You want to end this by insulting me?
I just asked you.
Well, that's an insult.
An insult? If I made a lot of money, I'd be happy to say so.
Well, that's very...
I didn't make any, though. But I did read the Freeh report word for word and found it to be the biggest laughingstock of an investigative report. What kind of an investigative report, Michael, as a lawyer, have you ever seen that didn't involve the most important people involved in this entire situation at Penn State?
I looked at the evidence itself.
What evidence?
I reacted to the evidence.
What evidence? What you just read me?
The emails.
Those emails?
Well,
it's evidence of nothing. Speculation.
What I was able to find in a file, I'm on a radio show. There's a file the length of my office, and it's a miracle I was able to dig them.
Well, if those emails were so important, you'd think you'd know them by heart. I do.
Why?
I knew, as I told you at the beginning of this interview, that there was no such email that said Joe Paterno recommended not going to the authorities, as you said he did.
Kev, if you've got nothing else, that's fine.
That's plenty, because that proves that you're making it up as you go along.
I think it's so low of you to criticize me. You invited me on this show. You didn't tell me what your agenda was.
What's my agenda?
Rude.
What's my agenda?
It was an ambush.
An ambush?
It was an ambush.
You don't know what an ambush is.
Oh, really?
To ask you questions about your role and about your statements, that's an ambush to you?
You're arguing with me.
Here's the thing. You're too used to getting soft pedaling from these imbeciles who haven't read the Freeh report. That's the problem.
Armin Katayan is an imbecile, and Maureen Dowd, and organizations that exist to help the welfare of sexually abused children, they're all imbeciles.
Some of them probably are.
Yeah, some of them probably are. There's an intelligence statement. Some of them probably.
Well, I can tell you, I can name you a few, if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd like to. Go ahead.
Christine Brennan.
I don't know who Christine Brennan is. She didn't interview me.
Well, excuse me, she didn't interview you.
No, I just don't know who she is.
Well, she's very outspoken in the USA Today, among others.
What about Keith Olbermann? Is he an imbecile?
He's a complete imbecile.
Okay.
He's a laughingstock.
Anyone who disagrees with you?
No. There are national media people whom I've spoken to who are highly respected, award winners in the field of journalism, who have told me just today that Keith Olbermann is so far over the top it's scary. And that Keith Olbermann will not answer to any questions that have a disagreement with his opinion. I'm sitting here allowing you to disagree with me all day long. That doesn't scare me because I know the facts. I'll guarantee you this, Olbermann has not read the Freeh report, I'll guarantee you. And even if he had read it, which he did not, he doesn't understand the word in it.
All right, so anyone who disagrees with you is an imbecile. I must be an imbecile then. I guess I'm an imbecile.
I don't think you're an imbecile, but I think you're irresponsible.
Yeah.
I think to say that about Joe Paterno when the prosecutor in the case says there's no evidence of any cover-up involving Joe Paterno, I think you're terribly irresponsible, yes.
Okay, all right. Hang your hat on what Frank Dina said. That's fine. All right, I got to run, Kevin.
He helped you win a lot of money.
Pleasure. Very nice. You got a lot of class.
I sure do.
A lot of class.
I sure do. You had to figure it was going to end that way. All right, we've got to take a break. We're a little behind. Let's quickly do that. We'll come right back on the Pabst Blue Ribbon Gateway Buick GMC Slaten Unleashed show right here on TalkSTL.com.